Welcome to the Product Boss Podcast, where we help product-based businesses grow their sales and improve their strategies.
Hey everyone, I want to introduce you to my co-host and biz bestie, Mina Kunlo-Sitep, an Amazon guru that has built a multi-six-figure product-based business.
And introducing the other half of the Product Boss, Jacqueline Snyder. She has helped launch and grow over 500 fashion apparel and accessory brands, even one of her own.
And together, we share our inventory of secret weapons that will help you dig deep and do the work it takes.
Are you ready? Let's build together.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Product Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Jacqueline Snyder, with my creative co-host, Mina Kunlo-Sitep. Hey Mina.
Hey Jacqueline.
So today we are so excited. We have a very good friend on the podcast. It's Tracy Matthews. She is the Chief Visionary Officer of Flourish and Thrive Academy, as well as Creatives Rule the World. Welcome, Tracy.
I am so excited to be here, you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to have you. And Tracy, you also have a podcast.
I do. It's called Thrive by Design. And basically, we talk about business, marketing, mindset, and just about all creativity advice over there. Our audience is primarily jewelry designers, but I feel like the lessons that we teach are applicable to any product-based business, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. So if you guys want to get more product info, check her podcast out. So Tracy, tell us a little bit about you, your background, because you are a product boss and where you are now.
Absolutely. So I've been in the jewelry industry for over 25 years. I kind of stopped counting because it just makes me feel old when I keep adding up the years. But I started my first company in the 90s, which is kind of crazy to even say out loud. But back then, I had taken a jewelry making class in college, and I knew I kind of was honing in my skill set for about 7 years before I launched full time. I kind of had a side hustle for many years and decided to just go for it one day. Started a jewelry company, started selling to stores. Over the course of 11 years, my products were sold, or my jewelry was sold in over 350 stores around the world. This was kind of before the internet. I think when I started my company, I didn't even have an email address. I had to get that. And so I love telling this story because people have it so easy these days. I used to have to pick up the phone and get rejected live calling someone, or people would not even give you information. So it was an interesting time to be selling product to stores. And basically back then, that was the way that you built a business. We didn't have the internet back then. And so now there's just so many ways to build a business, which is exciting. And so over the course of that time, I created a huge fan base, got a ton of press, tons of celebrities, all the things that everyone's trying to do, which was exciting. And then 2008 came around and kind of wiped out my business. So I had to do some soul searching and kind of think on how I wanted to use my creativity to kind of stand out. And I know that there was this existential crisis time for me when I was like, well, maybe I'll just go and teach yoga for a while or go do something different and start a new career. But I couldn't really get away from this passion that I had for design. It really is in my bones. So I launched a new jewelry company, but it was just a very different business model because I wanted something at that point in my life that was more profitable and more sustainable. So I started designing engagement rings and wedding bands and selling to private customers here in New York City and around the world. And that's the new iteration of my jewelry business. But during that time, I was approached by jewelry designers. I mean, I had been for many, many years. And they would ask for mentoring, basically can I take you to coffee? Can I pick your brain? Can you jump on a call? And so I started consulting with a couple companies. And one thing that started happening was that in that startup phase, they didn't have a lot of investment capital to hire mentors or to hire a consultant. And so I wanted to create some sort of scalable way to kind of give back to the jewelry industry, because I remember when I was starting out in business that the one thing that would reel in my head over and over again was I wish someone would just tell me what to do. And I wanted to be able to give back and tell someone what to do. To be able to just here's the framework of how you build a successful jewelry company, because I've done it. And that's how Flourish and Thrive kind of came about. And over there, we mentor jewelry designers and teach them business skills. We have courses, coaching, and membership. And it's been really like a labor of love for me to be able to give back to my industry and help emerging and already successful brands sell their jewelry in all the ways that you can sell jewelry. And in particular, what I'm really passionate about, though, is helping people to scale their businesses online, because I do believe that in this day and age, and we're going to see like another economic cycle coming through, that our ability to sell direct to consumer is going to be more powerful than ever as we kind of navigate. I don't know if it will be a recession or just like a downturn or what it will be, but we're probably heading into that at some point, not to be all doomsday-ish, but we can all recession-proof our businesses by being able to reach our customers directly. And so that's what I'm excited about. And that was not short. That was a long introduction, but there we go.
When I met Tracy, I was like, oh my goodness, it's my like spirit sister from jewelry, because it was a really similar progression of having my own business as well, and actually acting as a designer for other companies, and then eventually because not everyone has the knowledge that they've done it themselves, right? There's consultants out there that sometimes I'm like, have you actually done it?
Right.
I think that they haven't, a lot of them.
A lot of them.
You know what I love hearing is how people handled 2008. That actually was what helped my business, because people actually started hiring freelancers more at that time.
The same thing, right? So my designer consulting co-op started 2007, and I flourished in 2008 because people were losing their jobs, or actually a lot of stores and businesses were going under. And so it left all this room for new business. And here I was as the consultant saying, you've got an idea, let me help you actually do it.
I feel like 2008 was an awesome time to start a business, because like you weren't like at that point like relying on getting all these sales. Like I know so many successful designers who happened to start their business in 2008, and for them it became like a great opportunity to launch pad. But when you already have a successful business and you're relying on cash flow and you have a monthly nut you have to cover, it becomes really hard if your income is reduced by 90% to keep that going.
100%. And stores were going out of business. Yep. So I'm sure you had accounts that are no longer. Yeah.
It was really funny because I was just speaking at an event here in New York City called the Gold Conference. And one of the stores that put me out of business, because there were like 5 stores that filed for bankruptcy that owed me so much money that I couldn't recover from it. And one of the store owners happened to be there, and I wasn't working directly with her at that time, but she walked up to me after and she said, Tracy, was my store one of the stores that like took you out? And I said, I hate to admit it, but yes, but there's no hard feelings.
Yeah,
it worked out in the end.
All right. So we are really excited for you to share. What are you going to share with our listeners?
Well, I think like how to stand out in a saturated market. We can also talk a little bit about how I really believe that as a creative, we have this unique advantage to use that creativity to really make money. I think it's that starving artist myth is like really, I won't swear here, but BS, I'll use the initials. And, we really have this unique power that if we position our brands correctly and we're able to really stand out by creating, even if you have product that's similar to what a lot of other people do, I think we have this very unique opportunity for the brands that do this right. They will have a huge competitive advantage over others. And it just takes like digging into that.
Yeah. And I mean, you're doing it with jewelry, and we have a lot of jewelry clients and listeners, and we talk about candles sometimes, or people who are doing bar soaps and things like that. It's like, what's going to define them? Like, how are they going to stand out amongst the competition? And so I think jewelry is a good example, because if pendant necklaces are in and everyone's doing, the dog ear type necklaces, well, what's going to make them different?
That's a great question. And I think first and foremost, I think innovation and design becomes really important. Like try to do something that's a little bit different. Like the dog-eared style necklace has been done over and over again. Carded jewelry has been done over and over again. And while it's a great opportunity for packaging, like the more you can start to innovate, I think it really becomes impactful. I think like the first step, and we're not going to talk as much about design today, but I think one thing that I think needs to be top and forefront for anyone creating products is like, what is different about what you do, even though, like, let's say if I use the jewelry example, like a lot of people use circles in their jewelry designs. It's like a circle is a circle, but like what makes your circle different? And there's a lot of ways to make a circle different, but I think people bank on the same thing sometimes. And so like, how can you make that design something that's different, or the messaging behind that design different? But I think what's the most impactful for anything that you do when you want to stand out, especially when there's so many products out there for people to choose, is to really get clear on like what the brand story is. And that really starts with who your dream customer is. And I think a really big mistake that a lot of designers and makers and creative types and product business owners make is that they have a target market and they think way too broadly. And it becomes a problem in their messaging because they don't really understand why people are buying their product. And if you can't understand why someone's buying your product, you are talking about yourself instead of your customer. And what gets people to buy is for someone to be able to see themselves within your brand. And Donald Miller talks a lot about this. He talks about making your customers the hero of your story, not making your story about you, but making your customers the hero of your story. And the more that you can hone in on that and understand like the key motivators and the reasons why people actually buy jewelry, and then getting deeper, like why they would buy it from you, the bigger advantage you'll have to connecting with those people and building a business and a brand that really has consistent sales on an ongoing basis.
Can you get a little bit into kind of what you see with the clients that you work with? What have you been seeing as far as like their struggles when finding and really getting to that ideal customer?
100%. Well, let's start with the target market, because I think this is where people make a mistake. They're like, well, my target market is like 25 to 55-year-olds living in an urban area or whatever. And even if you narrow that market to like 30-year-olds living in 30-somethings living in an urban area, you're really talking about like a whole gamut of people. And one of the examples that I love to use is like, if you think about, let's take 30-year-old women, 30-something women, and compare them. So woman number one, she's like 32. She is a school teacher. She loves to buy jewelry, but she's married to her husband is literally like a coach at the same school, and they have a very limited income. So she loves jewelry and loves to buy it, but her buying capacity is really, or the way places she can buy jewelry is like a place like Target or Walmart or like Amazon, where it's like more of a, price sensitive audience. And maybe she's even like searching on Etsy for the people who underprice their work and, or selling their Etsy stuff or the sellers from China who are just selling random stuff. Then we take another 30-year-old who is, she's single. She's a self-purchaser. She makes $150,000 a year as a creative director for a small independent, advertising company. And she loves purchasing jewelry. And in fact, she is like, has a jewelry habit, but she spends most of her time shopping at places like Artisan Flea in New York City or some of the smaller boutiques. And so the reasons why she's buying jewelry is going to be really different. Her motivation to buy is really about, being unique and wanting something that no one else has, right? Then we take another person. She's 38 or 39. She is divorced from a managing director at a bank. She gets $30,000 a month in alimony and has a ton of disposable income. She is running around in more of an elite circle. And so for her, buying jewelry is really about status. And her motivation to buy, she's going to be shopping at places like Barney's or Bergdorf's and those places where she's, spending several $1,000s on a piece of jewelry. And her motivation for buying that jewelry is not only to feel like, oh, I've made it, or like I'm a cool person who has a lot of money, but also, to stand out amongst her friends so that when they're seeing her like, oh, where'd you get that? It's like this positioning play. It's like a weird motivation where for her, it's like, okay, so I can afford these expensive earrings and this is like what I'm getting, and I'm able to shop at Barney's and Bergdorf's. And so if you look at that target market segment, like it's just way too broad, and you need to get really specific. Like, are you someone who's going to be selling to the person who has $400,000 of disposable income to spend on her life? Or is it someone who's more in the middle range making 150? Or is it someone who has a household income of like $60,000 a year? It's very, very different. And so I think the more specific you can get on that and get with that, understand like really who is that dream customer? Who is that person that buys from you? You will understand like what is the underlying meaning of why they buy. And I learned this for the first time when I was on QVC in 2000, I think it was like 2007. For the first time, we had to do this sales training. And I thought I knew the whole reasons why people buy. I totally completely flunked that sales training in that moment because, they were talking, people want to feel something, especially when they're wearing jewelry. Jewelry's not something you need. It's not a necessity. And it's fascinating that it's such a, it's a gajillion-dollar industry. People continue to buy jewelry, even in slow economies because of the powerful meanings that jewelry has, or many products have. And I'm just using jewelry as an example because this is the industry that I'm in. But this is the same for all sorts of products. It's like people continue to buy, and like, how do you get them to really connect with what you're doing? And it really starts with getting crystal clear on who that dream client avatar is, and then digging deep into like the emotional reasons of why they shop and why they want your stuff. And that's kind of where it starts. And it's really digging deep into that dream client.
Yeah, I think they say something like that we make just 99% of our purchase on emotional basis, and then we justify it with rationale later.
Exactly.
And then we say we bought it because of this, the logic part, but that just was not true.
This is like total sidebar. I was like the other day down in Soho, like running from a meeting to like go grab a coffee, and I ran by this new store and I'm like, oh, that stuff's kind of cute. I have like 2 more minutes. I'll just like run in there, literally find something that I like. And they tell me the price. I'm like, oh, that's cheap. And I just like put it on, tried it on, or not cheap. It wasn't cheap. It was just like not crazy expensive.
It was reasonable.
Yeah. Most places in New York are like crazy expensive. Put it on. It was super cute. Ended up like shuffling out the door and buying it. And I was justifying it like, oh, the reason why I bought it, like in my head, I'm like, oh, it wasn't that expensive. But actually the real reason why I bought it is because I felt really good in it. You know what I mean? Made me feel like sexy and cute, and it was great for summer. And like, I'm going on this trip. I'm going to look good,
Yeah. And I'm sure the store, like the outside of the store looked a certain way. And I mean, it even goes back to how you talked about when you started pre-internet or,
yes.
Pre-email, where we were actually picking up the phone and walking into stores. People forget about that experience, the experience of walking by a new store and being like, ooh, what's that? And walking in, and you sort of need to create that virtually for people.
100%. And I think that this also ties into that dream customer. In our coaching program, we were working with a designer last year, and they already had a pretty good business. They came to us because they're already doing like about 100 to 150 a year in jewelry sales. Their product isn't super expensive. I think max like 250 for a ring. And they sell like alternative bridal engagement rings for people who don't want to buy real jewelry. So, and maybe they do, maybe their max price point for an engagement ring is like $1,000, but in the scheme of things, it's not super expensive. So they were coming to us because they had this crazy Etsy fluke at the beginning of the previous year that brought in like a ton of sales in the first 3 months of the year. And they knew that they would never beat their sales number from the previous year if they didn't figure out how to get consistent sales every month. And so when we started diving in to their website, because they're really working hard to transition those Etsy customers into website customers, we took a look, and like, I'm not even 100% sure what you sell because of the imagery that they were using and the way their website was designed. They weren't really speaking. Well, like if you knew what they did before and you landed on their site, you might be able to figure it out. But if you're just like a random person, you're like, is this a wedding photographer? Do they sell blankets? Is it someone who's based in San Francisco? Because one of the pictures had like the Golden Gate Bridge in the back. So like a wedding photographer based in San Francisco. Or maybe they're selling jewelry because like all the imagery that they were using was really more about the person than the jewelry on the person. And so there are really subtle ways and impactful ways that you can really tell your story, not only through photography, but even the words that they use. They changed some wording, and I can't remember specifically, but I'm just going to wing it here and try to remember, but it was like, it was something like you're unique and your engagement ring should be 2 or something. Oh, no, you don't fit a mold. Neither should your engagement ring or something like that. Click this form to fill out our custom form for engagement rings. And the copy was much better than that. But before it was just like, we do alternative bridal rings. And then they had, and it's just very general. And so like the more specific, someone who's going to a brand like the Fox and Stone to get an engagement ring, like they really are people who do not fit a mold. They're not people who want to go that traditional route. And so the more you can speak the language of the customers that you're trying to serve, and the more polarizing you can be. And I think this is an important piece, that the more impactful your brand will have. Because I feel like if you can get people to bounce off your site quickly because they're their own people, like when the right people show up, they will be like, this is for me right away.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we coach our masterminders on that too, where it's easier sometimes to say, I am not for, or I don't serve so-and-so than I serve, because they feel like, well, I should serve everybody. And if you get really specific, like you said, like I am not for the girl who wants the halo ring.
No, exactly.
For example, that she wants something that looks like her grandma's plus, I don't know, a Star Trek theme, who knows, then that's who it's for. So I love that. It's sort of like reversing into your customer.
And then when you're able to do that right, like really the right people can start to really connect with what you're doing, and you start putting them like sort of in the center of that brand story, like the brand story that you have. Because I don't know about like your people, but I feel like everyone gets so hung up when they're trying to identify who a dream client is, because when they do the exercises that we give them, they're like, it's me, but with more money. And I was like, that's a great place to start, because it might be you with more money. And then when you start selling to people that you love working with, it becomes like a hybrid of those people, right? And I think people make it a lot harder than I remember the first time I ever did one of those exercises that I wanted to pull my hair out. And like, I'm like, I don't know, it keeps them up at night. But
we just did a podcast episode on personalities. And so when you read your own personality, you're like, that feels like my palm is being read. You want those type of people to come to your website to be like, oh, that this is like me, my palm getting read. Whereas like other people are like, that's so not me.
Okay, so they're kind of figuring out their target market like really specifically, and so we mentioned candlelight, right? Like everybody with the glass candles with the pretty packaging and the hand poured scent. And so what then? How are they going to stand out? What else can they do? What would be the next step?
Well, I think the next step is really being able to start connecting with people. We talk a lot about in traditional advertising. There's this concept called the USP. A lot of people use it in their, defining what their brand's about. And typically that positions you on product and price. And I think, and then there's also the ESP, which is the reasons people buy, like the emotional selling proposition. With luxury products and products that like really create that emotional connection. And, we talk about this in the jewelry industry a lot too, is that the more you can create like desire for your brand or what it is that you're trying to create, the more you start to attract the people who want to buy from you. And so we call it over here a desired sharing proposition. And it's really about creating desire, sharing that desire, like being able to engage your people in the brand journey and get them to start sharing what you're doing. And then bringing people along that brand journey, which is something Kevin Kelly really spoke about in that 1,000 True Fans philosophy. And for people who don't know what the 1,000 True Fans philosophy is, you can Google it and read this epic blog post that Kevin Kelly wrote like years and years and years ago. But it's about this opportunity to start collecting customers that buy from you over and over again. And so I think I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I think it's relatable, and you guys can re-steer me if it's going way too off into the deep end. But I think it's really powerful when you're able to start collecting those customers who really love what you do, and then they start sharing with their other people. Like if we want to talk about candles, like I love Jo Malone is a huge company, but I love Jo Malone perfume. And my aunt got me hooked on it years ago. I like it because I don't like heavy scents, and their things are like really light, but they also have candles. And so my best friend knows that I like Jo Malone perfume. And so he bought me a Jo Malone candle for my birthday a couple years ago. or last year or whatever for my birthday. And I loved it because there's something about being part of that brand and being like, a Joe Malone fan that really helps me resonate with the products that they're doing. And I think that the more that you can start collecting people, who are the same, the same kind of fan for your products, whether you're selling candles or clothing or soap or jewelry or whatever it might be. And you create this consistent customer base where they're sharing what you're doing, and you prompt people in a way on that desire journey by asking them, not like in the right way, for referrals and to share it and to talk about what you're doing in a subtle way. That's how you start collecting more of those people. And I love using the example of eye cream because this is a really good product. Like if you're sitting at a brunch with your friends and someone's like, says to you, "Oh my gosh, your skin looks so good." And you're like, "Oh my gosh, I just got these new products. This eye cream I'm using is like incredible. Like erases all the whatever dark circles be gone," or whatever it is. And they're like, "What is it?" Like they would totally want to buy it. And so I think like this philosophy of being able to bring people on this desire journey and get them to connect with what you do and then also share it becomes the foundation of starting to collect those true fans and really building a brand around the messaging. And so when you can create a really strong desired sharing proposition, as we like to call it, and you learn how to write copy and captions in a storytelling voice that puts your customer at the center of your brand, when you learn to take the kind of photography that really resonates with the people that you want to work with, and that all the messaging, like from a 360 view, kind of filters through that lens, starting with the story, the brand story, or even your story, if you're like the center of your brand, becomes a way to kind of hook people in and keep them engaged. And I think it becomes really important to continue doing this over and over again by having some sort of system of automation on the back end of everything that you're doing for your marketing to get those people who bought once to buy from you again, because this is how it starts to filter in. So how can you create that raving fan base of people who they don't just buy once, they're continuing to buy over and over again. And if they can keep buying and you can keep collecting more people like that, it becomes really easy to build a business.
Yeah. People ask, what do we do on social media, right? Especially people who don't want to be the face of their brand. They don't want to be in their stories. We talk about, like Mina had this ice roller for her face that she got on Amazon or something.
It's amazing, by the way, ice roller.
I want that
on Amazon. Yeah, it's wonderful.
But she found it from just watching some random friend from Facebook. And we talk about that no like trust factor. So it's even just a random friend or someone that shows up in your feed, because we can't really control our algorithms these days because God knows what's happening with all that, right? So if you're getting people to share it, if you're asking them to share it, we ask for testimonials because someone asked us once, like, why don't you just ask? And so same thing with your product businesses. If they love it, say, do you love it? Could you share it? Or if they tell you, wow, I love this. It was such a great experience with your eye cream, then you could be like, amazing. Would you mind sharing that or telling your friends or going on? These are 3 ways you can share it.
Exactly. And one little like backtrack to the story thing is I really do believe with certain types of products, and not every product, that faceless brands are really dying. Like there has to be some, and if you don't want to be the face of your brand, that's fine, but there has to be some sort of brand personality, especially if you're trying to position yourself and sell directly. I know like Amazon sellers and stuff like that, or Etsy sellers, like it's slightly different, but like anyone who's trying to really build a brand, like you have to be able to have some sort of personality. And I think a great example of this is I just bought these sneakers. I'm gonna show you guys because we're looking at video, right? And this is like, I bought these sneakers and they're by a brand called The Greats. And The Greats is based in Brooklyn. And I was served an ad on Instagram and they had these other animal print sneakers that I loved. And I bought them. I get so many compliments on them. I did a photo shoot with them and people were like commenting on the photos when you could see them, like, where'd you get those shoes? And it was insane. And so when you can really track buying patterns of like your customers and create a personality around your brand, and even like in the little captions. So like, I have no idea who the founders of The Greats are, but they have a really specific brand personality and a brand voice that resonates with me. And while like most of the sneakers that they do, I don't love, but anything that's kind of funky, like I'm totally into. And so they sent me a text the other day that says like, shop our new Safari something collection. I was like, that Safari means animal prints. They probably have another look. And I was just going to check because one of my friends liked the sneakers that I originally bought. I was thinking it was maybe like a relaunch of that sold out collection, but it was a new version of it in a different style sneaker. And so I immediately bought another pair. Do I need another pair of animal print sneakers? 100% no. And I probably shouldn't have bought them like based on some of my goals these days. But you know, that brand really speaks to who I am as a human being. And like, I want to buy stuff from them. And so like, if they're launching something that is like in alignment with like the stuff I like, I'm going to do it, even if I don't need it.
Yeah. I love that. And shoes, I feel like if I could just come up with the next shoe, I would be a gazillionaire because those are the things that trend. And like, think about it, like Tom's, Havaianas, all the things.
What's the other one? Allbirds that people are obsessed with.
And then Rothy's we were talking about, which
Rothy's.
All over our Instagram feed, right? So good job, Rothy's. But that's the thing, right? Even Rothy's, for example, we don't know the owner. We always bring up Pura Vida because we had them on the podcast. And the same thing, that there are guys, there's a tribe of guys there that started this business, but you don't really see them on their stories, right? You see really cute girls and surfer guys. Yeah. Right. But they're still creating that story and they're creating that place. Like, I want to live there. I want to live in vacation and, you know, suntans for days and stuff. So what you're saying, I mean, really is the difference between if someone wants to come out and compete with Joe Malone, how do they do that? Well, they have to create a similar experience for their customers through all ways.
All channels.
Right. And then what's maybe the reason they don't go for Joe Malone? Maybe she's someone who does want to buy smaller. Maybe she's not a department store person. Maybe she loves that light scent, but then would rather get it from like the local person in Brooklyn at, what is it? It's that indoor place in Brooklyn that sells cool things.
Artisan Flea, maybe?
Yeah. I think you already talked about that earlier. But like something like that where you're like, ooh, like I get to see the person in real life making this stuff and they have their apothecary and all that. So thinking about that and oftentimes people say like, look at the bad reviews and fix whatever is in the bad review. And then that could be your differentiating factor.
Yeah. I mean, we call it personality, right? It's more like essence of that brand. They're literally putting their dollars to buy the essence for themselves of that brand.
Absolutely. I think it's like every brand needs a personality because people don't buy products. They buy stories.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same reason why, like, I think you were saying, but you could get a knockoff of something and you're going to get the people who are okay with the knockoff because they still want to live that essence of the knockoff. Like in LA, everyone has the love bracelet Cartier, like knockoff. And you're like, you got that downtown in the jewelry district, didn't you? You know, but they still want to be or have that bracelet or whatever it is. So you're selling that essence and you could tell. I mean, I reference this to my fashion clients all the time. You know, I don't feel like Coach is the place anymore, but Coach used to be the American, brand, right? The American designer brand. They're trying to come back at it. Or Michael Kors, you know, and it was because that was like a cheaper version of if they wanted Chanel or whatever the bag line was. I wear a lot of David Yurman that has a whole feeling experience that versus, you know, what's another one? Like Pandora or
okay.
I don't know, trying to think like of another mall store or Tiffany's.
Yeah, Jared's or something.
Tiffany's good.
I'm not a Tiffany's person. I'm a David Yurman person, for example. And if you look at how they're selling to the different people, there's different ways of selling it. And so,
you know, it's interesting on my website for my jewelry brand, I think somewhere in the about page, I said like, here's who I'm for. It's like for people who don't want a little blue box.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, I can't really like copyright infringement if I'm like calling out Tiffany's, but like at the end of the day, it's like, when I design jewelry, I don't design for people who really wear Tiffany jewelry or like, that's like what they want. I remember a friend of mine came to me years ago and we had just met. It was like more of a business relationship and she was about to get engaged to her partner. They were looking for 2 engagement rings because it's a female couple. And I was like, they were telling me what they wanted. And I was like, she's like, I was on your site and I really loved like XYZ ring because I do, even though it's not always my preference, I still do design some halo rings for customers, but I try to add my own little spin on it. People still love the halo. Anyway, so they wanted that. And I was like, yeah, well, I could totally help you out with that. And at the end of the day, they ended up spending like and my jewelry is not inexpensive, but someone who's buying jewelry at Tiffany is literally spending like 3 times more than what they would buy somewhere else, especially when they're buying the fine jewelry just to have the Tiffany name stamped in there. Later, when I was like doing some research to see like what she actually spent, the amount of money that she spent on a 1/2 carat diamond ring with a halo around it was like, to me, insanity. I'm like, you could have gotten that ring for way, way less. But at the end of the day, what was important to them is that they had a ring that had the Tiffany stamp on the inside. And so the people that I designed for are not that. And so I think, Mina, you talked about this earlier. It's like the more you can say who you're not for, and even like use that. It's like I 100% do that even in my brand story, because I know that when I'm designing for people, it's really for the people who don't want something that anyone else has.
Right. And that's something that's a really good tip for when people are thinking about the avatar is if there's some way that you could put into a tagline or in a nutshell exactly who you are not or are, like in your case, you are not for the person that buys for the little blue box, right? Instead of, you're not for the person that would spend 3 times more, right? There's a very lengthy thing to that, but they get the feeling instantly if it's a yes or no when they hear that tagline from them. Those people they will leave, and that's a good thing. People get really scared when people unsubscribe from their emails even, and they're like, oh my gosh, my unsubscribes are going down. You should be thankful those people are leaving, because then they're not making you pay the tier price of the extra emails you're paying for, because Lord knows those get to be pretty expensive. And so when I see those people unsubscribe, I'm like, you know what? They were never going to buy from me because they are not my people. And I'm thankful that they had taken the time to unsubscribe, because they could just instead delete my emails.
It's so funny to me. I was talking with one of our partners in business, and this is really fascinating. And we're strategic partners for Flourish and Thrive. And they were doing a favor for us. And she said, well, we don't like to send out too many emails because we're trying to eliminate the number of unsubscribes we have. I'm like, well, why aren't you sending out emails? That's how you make sales. Like, I don't understand like why people don't want to email people. Like, you don't want to email them every day, but like some brands do. I look at my Gmail folder because I have a separate folder for like shopping online, separate email address that I use for when I'm shopping online, because I don't want it to go into my business inbox. And certain companies sometimes send 3 emails a day. I don't look at all those emails, and they probably have really low open rates in certain cases because people miss them. But at the end of the day, I frequently buy from those people, from those stores that I love to buy from. And while we're not necessarily the small independent designers or independent brands aren't necessarily an Intermix or a Net-a-Porter or an Outnet or Veronica Beard or one of those brands, or even Bandier that might be sending the 3 emails a day or an email every single day. You can learn a lot, I think, from what big brands are doing from an email marketing strategy to actually sell more products on your website. That's a total sidebar, but at the same time relevant, because I think the reason why I love being on those email lists is because like I'm like they put me at the center of the story. It's like the stuff that they're selling, the products that they have. I love also watching what they do for marketing. And if you're someone who struggles with marketing, I think that following brands that you love, because typically we are all part of some sort of aspect of our dream clients or the people that we want to bring into our orbit, the more you can study what they're doing, your marketing will just like skyrocket if you can emulate that for your brand. Not copy, very different, but emulate that for your brand.
Jacqueline, what was that bag brand that you bought from that with your initials? Do you remember?
Henry Bendel's?
Yeah, Henry Bendel's. It's the timing. Like I remember Jacqueline bought that bag because she said, oh, I'm going to meet you at the conference. Oh, look, I got an email from Henry Bendel's. Oh, I'm going to buy this 3-piece set now all of a sudden. And it was done. So literally, I mean, any other time, yeah, she might have been annoyed, but at that time she wasn't. So I think it's just a matter of you just have to be okay with that. Sometimes you're going to annoy people. You can't be perfect. You can't be, you don't know when they're going to buy. But at the same time, she is their customer. She'll never actually get to, like, unsubscribe from their list. So.
Well, I will, because they're officially out of business, but
they are, no way.
Oh my gosh, Bendels is officially out.
The Fifth Avenue store, everything, it closed down at the beginning of the year. They were bought out by L Brands, which owns like Pink and Victoria's Secret and all that. And the problem is that they went young with it, I feel like. So they did actually lose me as a customer for a really long time, because it went from being, I always loved the functionality and the design of it all. And then they started going Kate Spade competitive with like Victoria's Secret customer, which was like really young. And I feel like that kind of killed it. That's my own professional opinion. So, but what Mina is saying though, is that I've been a fan since I was before 30, because my 30-year-old birthday cake was like brown and white striped Bendel box.
It was? Oh my God, that's so cute.
And
that's a raving fan right there.
whatever, many, many years later, age that I am now, I didn't buy because they were losing me, but they did get me on the cool luggage, right? Because I like that functionality. I didn't want to wear a backpack sitting in first class flying to a conference. I wanted to have something that looked more like a female business owner. And that's what sold me on that. So, I mean, I think it's such a great point, just the inboxing. And I love this, that we brought up the concept of unsubscribe, because people do get really scared that people are unsubscribing. But if they really are your fan, they're going to stay. They're going to be interested in what you have next.
That's true.
And use that unsubscribe philosophy for life. If you're living your best life and people do not want to be around you, let them unsubscribe from your life, because they are not your people, you know?
I love it. And this is why I think like continually nurturing the people who already have bought from you, but then also continually bringing new people into your vortex is very important, because you have to continue, because you are going to get people, you're going to lose people. You just will. Mm-hmm. I remember when I rebranded and started my new business after closing the old one, I thought in the beginning that all those people were going to come and be my big fans and like buy all the other jewelry, but it's like it was a total different price point. It was a total different business model. And while my design aesthetic was similar, it was just the people who were buying from me from my old business were not necessarily the customers for my new business at that time. Now, some of them have come around, but I remember in the beginning when I started emailing my email list back then, I was losing people left and right. And it was devastating. I'm like, they don't love me anymore. But at the same time, I'm like, this is good. Like, I don't need to pay the extra money for the people that don't want to be there. And if they're never going to spend a couple $1,000s with me on an heirloom redesign or a piece of jewelry, like, what's the point having them there anyway?
Right. I mean, I think it's so true. Brands do evolve just like how Henry Bendels did, right? And so even as the business owner in being a solopreneur, your business now will look different than it is later on. So it's hard to keep the same focus and the same avatar, because it will evolve. Mm-hmm. I kind of like to give the example of like the beer industry, where like Budweiser and everybody was trying to, they were targeting the young college guys that were like, what was that promotion? It was like, what's up or whatever. I can't remember. Do you remember?
What's up?
Yeah. And then like Dos Equis and what was the other one? Stella Artois. They go after the sexy, rich, affluent, educated man, the older man, the gentleman, basically the most interesting man in the world. And they went for that instead. And that kind of evolved out of, you know what, we're going to do something different. Like what Tracy says of, you don't have to cater to those people, those 20 somethings, just because you're beer, you can be a different version of that. And it can evolve into that too.
It's like the upgrade.
Yeah, right. The upgrade.
Yeah.
And even now, the Super Bowl commercials that were out this year in 2019, I think it was Budweiser, or not very good because I wasn't really fully paying attention, but they were like, we don't have this as an ingredient. So they were going more to now what the trend is like the natural, the people who don't want the high fructose corn syrup, that kind of thing. They were basically advertising against an ingredient that was in somebody else's beer that was their differentiating factor, right? Even though they may have always been this way, but they're realizing that the trend of awareness around maybe consumption of what you're putting into your body, that's enough to be like, oh yeah, that's it. My husband always talks about the Subway there was a whole thing against Subway that it was like Subway has the same ingredient in it that tires have or something like that, right? It was like this.
Tires?
Yeah. Like it was a bashing Subway ad. Well, that ingredient was water. Right?
That's just shady though,
Oh my
seriously.
gosh.
Like but like people remember that. And so, but if you can do that, not obviously to bash another brand, but if you can differentiate yourself in a creative way, I think it's just showing you what these big brands are even doing against each other. So Tracy, so we like to wrap our interviews with some fun questions.
Let's do it.
Yeah. You ready to jump in? Okay. Yeah. So what is your coffee order?
Oh, I love Colombe coffee. La Colombe. I don't know how to say it. Is it La Colombe or La Colombe coffee? And I get Corsica with a splash of oat milk.
You're an oat milk lady. Me too.
Okay.
What's the favorite thing on your desk?
Oh gosh, my colored pens.
That's awesome. Finish this sentence. When I pick up my phone, I
check my text messages.
Oh, nice.
That's a good one. Everyone always says Instagram.
Yeah.
You wish you knew how to.
I wish I knew how to be a better singer and play an instrument at the same time.
Interesting. What was the last?
Your husband a run for his money on Broadway someday.
That guy can like pick up any instrument and play it. It's kind of insane. So you wish you knew how. Nope, I already asked you that one. What was the last thing you watched?
What was the last thing I binge watched?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, I started binge watching episodes. Do you guys know this show?
Yeah.
It's like a Showtime show from like years and years ago. I don't know why. I just was like, I want something easy.
What is it?
Episodes, and Joey's on it from Friends.
Oh.
And so
I was like, when you said episodes, I was like, yes, episodes of.
called episodes. And like, there's so many episodes of episodes. And I wanted something easy to watch in bed, like, because I'm terrible. One of those people who like sticks my iPad like right in front of my face before I go to sleep. But whatever, I still fall asleep. And it's still going. I'm still binge watching it because it's taking forever to get through it.
It obviously was a good show though, because it was on for so long, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he was the guy who had the TV career after, even though like in Friends, you were like, maybe not the best actor.
Well, he has a show now, I think.
Yeah. He just keeps
gray
working.
hair.
All right. What should the title in your signature actually say on your email signature?
Creative badass at making money.
I love it. And then do you have an alter ego or stage persona?
I do. I don't really have a good name for her yet, but you know, I would call her like Confident Connie or something like that. I got to think about it. I don't have a name for her, but there is like, I kind of step into that. So I used to do these like, you know, I had one called Attractive Amethyst because I wanted to use like a jewelry name for when I was like going through that like rebuilding phase of my business. I'm like, you are like a money magnet. You're attractive amethyst. I haven't really thought about it, but like definitely when I walk on stage, like I'm pretty like outgoing anyway, but like something changes and I like come alive. It's like the weirdest thing.
Just call yourself Beyonce. That's all.
Beyonce.
Just give her.
Just Queen Bee. Queen Bee.
All right. Mina gets the last two.
Yeah. And what is your, I forget. I
Most
don't have
used
it.
emoji.
Yeah. What is your most used emoji?
I would say blowy kissy.
Oh, I love that one too. And I add additional heart usually. So if anybody ever direct messages us and gets a kissy face with an additional heart, that's always me. And last question, Tracy. We often say that entrepreneur years are like dog years. What would you tell baby Tracy in the beginning of her entrepreneur journey now that you're further along?
Oh, geez. It's not going to be easy, girl. But this is going to make you a really strong person. And the trade-off is that this is going to be the most fulfilling thing that you've ever done.
Agreed. Amen. I've got the
Amen.
show emoji hands up for you.
And a kissy face.
And a kissy face and a few other things.
So Tracy, tell our listeners how they can connect with you.
Awesome. Well, if you're a jewelry designer, I'd love for you to head on over to Flourish and Thrive Academy. You could take our jewelry brand Brilliance Factor quiz over at flourishthriveacademy.com/brilliance. And if you're not a jewelry designer and you're a creative of any type, you can download a special download that I have over at Creatives Rule the World called the Visionary Code. And it's super awesome. Whether or not you're a founder of a company, if you're creative, I think this is a really helpful way for you to kind of manage your energy so that you can spend more of your time being creative. And you can head on over to creativesruletheworld.com/VC to grab that.
Great. And we'll have that all in the show notes. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
This episode is over, but it doesn't have to end. Head over to our Facebook group, search for the Product Boss Biz Community, or the link is also in the show notes. Come connect with other product bosses just like you. We'll see you in there.
If you love the Product Boss podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, share, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time, product bosses, let's make it happen.